Good evening and a very warm welcome to First Issues, as tonight we delve into the China-Africa relationship. 2015 ended with a barrage of positive media stories about the China-Africa relationship, following the second summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, in Johannesburg, South Africa. It marked only the second time in the 15-year history of FOCAC that the leaders met, the first being in 2006 in Beijing, China, so the media frenzy was understandable. It was, however, given full momentum by China's announcement of debt cancellations, zero-interest loans, and most significantly, a 3-year, $60 billion investment plan for infrastructure, skills, and funding in Africa. Despite its own slowing economy, Chinese President Xi Jinping said China would step up investment in factories manufacturing goods for export in Africa, in addition to building roads, ports, and railways on a continent long seen as a major commodity source for China. In addition to grants and zero-interest loans, China plans to train 200,000 technical personnel, provide 40,000 training opportunities for African personnel, 30,000 government scholarships, and 2,000 educational opportunities. Zimbabweans announced their adoption of the Chinese currency, the yuan, soon after, following the cancellation of about $40 million in debt, with Minister Patrick Chinamasa stating their ambitions to increase trade with Beijing. 2016, however, has seen story after story of deepening economic woes for a country that news agency Xinhua says is Africa's largest trading partner, with trade volumes between them amounting to $220 billion in 2014. Famous economists and investors are making grim predictions, wondering whether 2016 is the year of doom for the superpower as it suffers its weakest economic growth in 25 years. New data shows that Chinese customs authorities reported that commodity imports from Africa fell 38% in 2015 compared to 2014, and some are saying that the China-Africa economic relationship is entering a new, more austere phase. Could this be true? Stay with us this evening as we look into the matter. Welcome back to First Issues, as tonight we ask whether the economic slowdown happening in China is likely to affect the country's ambitions for Africa. We visited China's ambassador to Botswana, Zheng Zhuqiang's residence here at the Chinese embassy in Gaborone, as well as spoke to economists Keith Jeffries and Moatlhodi Sebabole to cut through the speculation and better understand the China-Africa relationship. We now hear Ambassador Zheng's commentary on the nature of the China-Africa relationship.
Without Africa's development, there will be no world economic development. And China's purpose is to realize the balanced development throughout the world. So no one should neglect Africa. And after the establishment of FOCAC 15 years ago, we found China set a very good example. We found many other big countries or groups also establish a similar cooperation mechanism with Africa. For example, India, Republic of Korea, United States, and Turkey. They also express strong interest in strengthening cooperation with African countries. I think it's a very good tendency or very good trend for African countries, because Africa can have more partnership for development. I believe the future of China-Africa cooperation are very bright, and we have a long way to go, and we should keep this momentum. And of course, the first step, we should carry out the action plan passed by the last FOCAC summit.
Can you give us a little more details as to the pillars and plans that were decided upon at the FOCAC summit?
One is the political equality and the mutual trust, that is in political area. We will strengthen visits by each other, and we will strengthen consultation on important issues, not only international issues, but also bilateral issues. And the second area is economic cooperation. We call it a win-win economic cooperation, because the scheme of the summit was win-win economic cooperation for the common development. The third area is a mutual enriching cultural exchange. And the fourth area is on security. It's a mutual cooperation on security issues. And the fourth area is on the international arena, international fora. So both sides should strengthen solidarity and coordination in international fora. So that's 5 pillars. Actually, it's a 5 area. So it covers all the areas of relationship between China and African countries. And the so-called 10 major cooperation plans is the main contents of the action plan passed by the summit. First plan is China-African cooperation industrialization. And the second plan is called agriculture modernization. The third one I remember is infrastructure construction. The fourth one I remember is trade and investment facilitation, and others are green development and public health and poverty eradication and people-to-people exchange and peace and security cooperation. I cannot remember all the plans, but that's most of them. So in the next 3 years or beyond, our main task is to do or to cooperate, to carry out our cooperation according to those strategy or those plans, the one lifting 5 pillars and 10 cooperations. I think 10 cooperations are very concrete. That's the main task. And if we carry out or implement the 10 cooperation very well, that will benefit all of us, because those plans, those programs are very tangible to people's life, and will bring a lot of welfare or benefits to the peoples of African countries and China.
Moving closer to home, how do you expect the resolutions made at the FOCAC summit to benefit, if at all, the Botswana?
China-Botswana has already done a lot of cooperations. For example, in infrastructure construction, in education, in public health, in wildlife protection, and others. I think in the next 3 years, under the framework of the FOCAC Summit, I think we should map out a plan or a program to implement the 10 cooperation plans. And first of all, I think we should the first step is to talk with Botswana side. And actually, we have already done that. We have approached different ministries, especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, because that ministry is in charge of the bilateral relations and cooperation. And that ministry is the coordinator between our two countries. And we hope that our embassy and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation can have a meeting. And actually, we call it a consultation mechanism. We will meet from time to time. And this side is the Embassy of China. The other side is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation and other ministries concerned. We can sit together to discuss how to implement the 10 cooperation plans. We have already done a lot of cooperation. I think we can continue those cooperation, and we can also go into new areas. For example, we can go into poverty reduction, and we can go into we can do more in wildlife protection and conservation, and we can also go into agricultural area, because China has advanced technologies, experiences, and the capital, and we are ready to share our experiences and technologies with African countries, including Botswana.
This year has begun with a lot of stories telling us about China's current economic woes. Can we expect China's development to continue to bolster Africa's development in light of the challenges it is currently facing?
Yeah, it's true that China's economy is slowing down compared with previous years. I think it's very normal, because the world economy is very sluggish. The recovery is very, very slow. And in the same time, after 35 years rapid development, China needs time to digest our economic achievements, because of the high speed. So sometimes we cannot care much on the balance or the good shape of the economy. Sometimes this sector goes too fast. Maybe the other sector will lag behind. So they cannot meet each other. So we need time we can call it a structural reform. So we want to change the structure of our economy in order to develop further or better. So two factors coincide to each other. I think it means our economy cannot grow as fast as before. And I think one reason is the objective environment. Another factor is because from our within, and we do it by ourselves. We want to control the growth rate. And maybe after we successfully change the structure, I think it will lay a better foundation for our economic development. And the last year, China's economic growth rate is 6.9%, nearly 7%. That's the fastest in major economies of the world. And a lot of people complain about the slowdown of Chinese economy, and they say the Chinese economy jeopardizes the other countries' economy. I think it's not true. So even though China's economy is slowed down, but China still realized the highest growth rate among major economies. So 6.9% is 3 times the growth rate of the US, is 5 times of the EU market, and also 10 times of Japan. So China is still the biggest contributor to world economy.
The ambassador says to say that the Chinese economic slowdown is negatively impacting African economies is misleading, as China continues to import significantly from the continent. He also says the investments promised at the FOCAC meeting last year will not be affected either.
I read the newspapers said China's economy negatively influenced the development of African countries. Actually, if you look at the imports, for example, if you look at the value is lesser than last year. But if you look at the volume, actually the volume is increasing. So actually China import more from Africa, but because of the low price, the value is lower than before. So actually China is still a big contributor to African development. And that means Africans export to China are doing very well. China is still a big market for African products. So I think, the world economy, the world financial crisis or world economic crisis are not created by China. It was started years ago from United States, and China is also a victim of the world economic recession. And China also suffered a lot. That's why we should change our way of development. We should change our economic structure. That's because we must get used to the new environment. So we call it, maybe people are familiar with this term, we call it a new normal. New normal means we will not develop as fast as before, but we will develop with better quality in a more balanced way. And even though China's economy is slowing down, but we will not influence the cooperation with other countries, especially with African countries. And the 10 cooperation plans reached by FOCAC is our promise, and we will keep our promise, and we will do our best to implement those cooperation plans. Actually, back in China, we have divided the duties to different ministries. So different ministries of China has already taken back their tasks. And because the 10 cooperation plan covers many areas, not only economic and commercial area, but also education, health, poverty eradication, peace and security or other areas. So our resolve is still very firm, and I think in the next 3 years, people, especially African people, will see that China will be very serious and will take every measure to implement those cooperation plans.
Welcome back to First Issues as we continue to dissect the Africa-China relationship. We ask economists Keith Jeffries and Moatlhodi Sebabole what exactly drives the economy of the superpower that is China.
Primarily, Chinese economy has been driven by investments. And over time, we've seen a lot of China growth going towards real estate particularly. There was a lot of infrastructure development that was coming through to China. If you look at the rail and road network, if you look at the energy infrastructure, and just a holistic boom around just infrastructure development as an enabler for the growth of the Chinese economy.
It's a mixture of things. They have a very high level of investment. So high savings, high investments, good planning, big population, of course. So all of those things combine to make it a large economy and a fast-growing one. So the combination of the two means that the impact on the rest of the world is massive. As I say, partly because of its size and partly because it is growing so fast and has a high level of investment.
But what we have seen, especially going to 2015, was a deliberate shift from the Chinese government, where now they were thinking the exposure towards real estate and the exposure towards investments was quite massive, and they wanted to redirect the direction of growth in the sense that they want to balance the investment growth with a little bit of a consumption-led growth, which is to say now they wanted the consumer to play a more active role in the development of the Chinese economy. So that comes in terms of human capital development. It comes in terms of the consumer themselves playing a more active role as far as spending in the economy is concerned. So there is a consumer spending concern in there. There is a consumer saving and investment as an example, which is why we also saw towards the end of 2015 a lot of the investments which were being made in the stock markets coming from individuals now instead of corporates. So I think that's the shift that we have seen, and that's why we're seeing also a little bit of a movement in terms of the Chinese economy not growing as massively as it was before. It's a result of that shift in the growth dynamics from investment-led growth to consumption-led growth.